All right. Well, hello everyone. Good morning. Welcome to our Fridays with Fiscal for the IPDP Overview session. My name is Amanda. I'm going to take us through everything today. We have quite a bit to cover, but overall, so what we're focusing on is the IPDP software or Individual Professional Development Plan. Just to kind of kick us off, so the IPDP software is used for tracking employee plan and activities, and then also allowing the LPDC committee to be able to manage the approvals of those things. So there's a couple different parts to the software. What we're going to do, users or districts that were using the legacy IPDP software can bring over their history. And so what we're looking at today is we're going to talk through a couple different sections for you. And the first thing is I'm going to go into this documentation. So we'll take a look at what we have set up so far. We definitely have some pieces in place to help you at the ITC with that process of bringing over the legacy data into the new application. And then we have the standard user manual. So we'll take a look at the pages that are there. And then also the appendix. And that's where we have some additional helpful information. That's where the conversion guideline is. And then also some like step-by-steps that can be used for each different kind of user. After we talk through the documentation, I'm going to then focus in on that conversion guideline, and we'll go through the steps that at the ITC you would take to actually get that data from the legacy kiosk application and load everything in to the new software. And then what to check in the new software, any setup items that you may need to do then once you're up and running with it. So we'll go through all of that. I anticipate around that time we'll probably take a little break because I know I have a lot for you today. And then to kind of wrap up what we're going to do is actually look at an overview of the software itself. So I'm planning to take a look and we'll see different kinds of user views. We'll take a look at entering a plan and the process of approval and basically the life cycle of a plan. So I think that that'll be really good to see, and we'll get to see a lot of the pieces of the software and how it works. Um, so that said, because this is going to be quite a long training and recording, we are recording everything. We are going to save this as a video. And what we're going to do is break it down into chapters. So those of you on the call today, if you need to go back and review any pieces, you'll be able to, along the bottom bar of the video, you can, click to skip ahead and each section will be labeled. And also in the description, I'll have like the timestamps. So we'll break everything into the chapters, and then that way it'll be nice and manageable, hopefully. Okay, so that's our plan. The first thing we're going to do is go into the documentation overview. So I'm starting at the main page. You can get to the documentation link from the software, like with our other applications, and I will show that at the end. But for the purpose of our starting, I'm starting from our homepage because I just want to show, if you have the homepage saved or if you, look up and navigate to the homepage, this is where you're going. So you want to go to IPDP documentation. And that brings you to our like starting space. This has a couple different links on it. The first one here is to the user manual. So we'll take a look at that in a second. The next one goes to the installation guide. This is the more technical guide. This is for actually like setting up the instance for those ITCs that, if you host your instances at your ITC, that's going to be the installation guide. And then this last one is the details on importing the files from Kiosk. So we will be looking at this page later. This one is still private right now. I think these bottom two are. But we are working on those in coordination with Justin, our project manager. He's working on these in the installation guide as well. And when everything is ready, we will flip those so that they are public and can be viewed. So let's go to the user manual. And what we have here, so I'm a little bit zoomed in, but I want to make sure you can see everything, is we have our sidebar that kind of breaks everything down. We start on our landing page that has the details of logging in and the home page, the profile, all of the information here. How we laid out this user manual is the same way the ESS user manual is laid out. So activities, when we get into the software, you'll see that there are different options under activities based on a role. So, I'll have my activities, but if I'm a supervisor, I also have supervisor activities. So any pages that could be under that activities menu are all documented within this page, and they're broken down into sections. So the pages on the side are consistently like that. So if you're looking for something and it's like an underlying page, you want to go to whatever that menu option is, and then you can look from there. So we have all of these out here. Plans work the same way. Once we get in and actually look at some of the pieces of the software, you'll see how those coordinate. Additionally, I wanted to just open the appendix here because this is where we are headed, is the IPDP Conversion Guide. This is what we're going to be going through. User procedures. So this is the section where it has the walkthroughs. So we have standard user plan, plan and activity procedures, and then district manager setup procedures. Coming soon, I'm working on supervisor and committee members. So the goal with this is, ultimately like the people actually using this application, and I mean, you at the ITC can definitely use this for learning, for training, but ultimately the end user would be able to see which access applies to them. And if they're a standard user that needs to create a plan, create an activity, they could come in here and just jump to the steps that they need. This is a lot of what we're going to be seeing today correspond right to these steps. And I say that like we're not seeing a ton of stuff today, so probably will keep saying that. All right. So let's see. Let's make sure we're ready to jump in. Um, okay. Okay, yes. So that's our documentation overview. So next, I'm going to switch into the IPDP Conversion Guideline. This is what we have to kind of get all of the steps in one place for you at the ITC to be able to go through and collect the legacy data and get that converted over into the new application. We have this broken down into sections. So first we have the conversion timeline. So the first official production release will be in July 2025. From there, July to December, that's when you would be actually doing the process of, switching your districts from the legacy application to the new application. And, at the ITC, I'm sure you will organize, your timelines depending on how many districts you have to convert over. And you sort of have the flexibility within that 6 months to determine what your plan is. By December 31st, everyone needs to be, off of the old application and in the new application. So that's what we're looking for as far as timeline. Okay. Okay, and here's where we get into the steps. So we have this sort of set up where we have pre-extract, then we'll go through and get the actual data. So pre-extract as well, everything's in the legacy system still. We haven't done anything to get those records out yet. In looking over, the steps that we've been working on, and we've done some test loads as well at SSDT. So a lot of this information is based on those test loads that we did, and then other pieces of information as far as like what the plan is for importing. As far as like pre-extract review, I really feel like these are review items. There's not necessarily a big like action item. You definitely have to go in and like change all, do any like specific updating, but these two things are good things that we wanted to put here to be aware of, to review, to start off the process. So the first thing is reviewing the employee IDs compared to USPS. So ideally, those would match. Um, but we have seen in the test imports that sometimes there is an error for the employee ID not matching USPS. So the employee ID that's linked to a user in Kiosk doesn't match the USPS employee ID. So generally, what we've seen is that those are older users that are no longer active. And so, in that case, it um, may not be a big deal. But you want to review these and make sure that, if there are users that they want to bring over, those would have the correct USPS employee ID number, and then that can help the loads later be more clean. So yeah, so generally they're older users. Users are marked as like deleted in Kiosk will come over as deleted, but we are importing those to prevent errors. But they're getting imported with a disabled status. So it is still looking at those. Um, so the employee ID connects users in USPS and legacy kiosk, IPDP. So when we do the import process, that value is used throughout multiple of the imports because it's used in the files. And if they're not corrected, then there are errors that it can cause that's user not found, which can then be addressed or ignored throughout the process. That's an error that, we've seen. I'll show you when we get to the import steps, we have documented errors that we've found. But definitely know that as you all start your test loads at the ITC, as you go through the process and run into things, we are here to help you with solutions. And, as those things come up, we can document additional details as well. If there are, further things that we come across as far as like solution or situation, because we want to review those situations and ultimately bring in everything that we can, right? Okay. So the next one is reviewing building codes. The building codes are used to determine the committees available to each user. Now, this one, again, this is just a review step. You don't need to do anything at this point in the process. Honestly, this one is on here as a heads up. So these are imported, the building codes are imported on the committee records. However, from what we've seen with the files, there are differences in the codes from the legacy kiosk to USPS building codes. Um, we have notes that are included in the import from kiosk guide before importing that file that tell you how to address that, how to go about that load. So this is sort of like your preliminary heads up saying, hey, this one's going to be different. They'll be corrected in the spreadsheet at the committee load step. And they don't need to be updated at this point. You're not updating them in USPS or anything. But in USPS, the core codes page is where those codes are coming from. And when you do the update, the codes that you're bringing in need to match those 3-digit codes. So again, that one comes back later, but this is just, as far as pre-extract, just kind of preparing you for like, okay, this is something that is going to come up and you'll need to know. All right. Next is the application setup. So this is actually creating, the IPDP instance. And this part we are not going into today. This is the more technical side. So if you're locally hosted, we will have this installation guide available with the details for that. If you are hosting with Management Council, I put a link to the Management Council state software hosting documentation, and so the instance would be set up through MC. All right. And then we get to our import steps. So now this part, especially this first part here with extracting the data. So for those of you that did this for ESS, getting the files is going to be a similar manner. So the following is how you extract the data from the legacy IPDP/kiosk system. And in order to do that, you are going to log into that kiosk test application. We recommend the ITCs do this. When you log into this kiosk test application, um, here's the steps. I probably should scroll down to this. We have the screenshot here. So once you're logged in, you want to go to kiosk, ITC kiosk administrator, update, delete the district configuration. I'm sorry, configuration. And then you get the list of districts. So you'll look up the district and then it'll have, so we have the IPDP extracts are running, they're all in one file and they're running daily. So what you'll want to do, obviously you're going to coordinate with your district. I mean, for the test imports, I guess you could do that anytime, but before they're gonna, when you're gonna actually switch them over, you want to coordinate to make sure that, any activity they've done in there, they stop. And then you'll pull the file. So you'll download the zip file from this test kiosk application. And so when you're ready, you click the file link on the most recent version. And what that's going to do is it's going to download a file to your computer, and it's going to be a zip file. This will be the file name. And the file contains so all of the IPDP related data. So here is a screenshot. This is an example of all of the files that are included in that zip file. So they're all labeled here, and these basically contain all of the records, all of the plan records, all of the configuration records that can be extracted out of the legacy system. And you can do the extract all to open that zip file. All right. And then here's where we get into the import steps. So I'm going to click to go to this page. Let me open this in a new tab here. Again, this page is still in progress. This is one that we are actively working on right now, but we plan to have this available to you soon. So if you were to try and go here, I know you can't right now, but don't worry, we'll be sharing it as soon as we can. We're coordinating with our project manager, Justin. He's helping us review some of the details we have on this page as well. He's added a lot of information to help with the files. So we'll get this shared out there with you soon. But I want to look at it. I still want to show you what we've got out here for you today. So the first thing we have is the outline for the import process. Now, there are quite a few steps here. There's a lot of files from the legacy program. And so each of those files need to be loaded in. They do have a specific order that they need to be loaded in as. And so we've got that laid out and numbered in steps here. The other thing that's really nice is when you do the kiosk loads, the drop down in the application and the list of the files in that drop down is the correct order that you need to import them in. So, you'll be going down the line. But let me show you sort of these sections that we have set up as an example. So as you go through, you'll go step 1, 2, down the line. I'm skipping to 2, but don't do that. uh, so uh, let's just look at, for an example, the import users option. So each of these sections is laid out like this. You have the file name, and so this you would go to your file. This is going to be the file name that you're looking for this load. And then we have a list of the required headers. These files do have more headers in them. You don't necessarily need to manipulate any other, you don't need to go in and delete any of the other columns or anything. It's best to leave those alone. But just so you know, these are the required headers. This is what it's looking at in the file. All other columns in the file are ignored. And then we have a sentence here, and we have this on each one of these. This file will load the user data. And then, it has a little note here, as I mentioned earlier, even deleted users are imported. Consistently throughout these pages, we've tried our best to give a good description. This one's pretty simple, just saying, it's the user page, obviously. But as you go through these loads, we've added, okay, the plan, this file is filling out this information. So as you go through these loads, you can kind of spot check as you go. So, if you load the users, then you can go to the users grid and make sure everything kind of looks good. Make sure, that you see users there, right? Although you do get confirmations in this kiosk loader as far as the records loaded as well. And then at the bottom here, so for each of these sections, we have possible error conditions include, and this is where we have filled out some of the possible errors that you can receive. We've added details where we can. Again, I expect that we will likely be adding to these throughout the process, to further clarify where we can, and add some detail there. So you could, if you come across an error, some of them are specific to, the load that you're working on. Those are in this section. You could always do like a search on this page, if you did like a control find, if you're looking for a specific error. So hopefully that helps, in the process, if you run into certain things. Let me go back up to the top here real quick. So I'm going to scroll. The other section I just want to show real quick is other errors is at the bottom. And so we also have this section that shows other possible errors, and these weren't specific to like a certain load. They could happen in multiple loads. And so like this first one is missing identifying properties for kiosk committee member. So this is like an example. Headers should contain the following. Well, this is the error you get if you pick the wrong file and you pick the wrong load type. So that could just be as simple as like making sure you switch which load type you're working on. So yes, so we have that all kind of organized there for you to help out with that import process. Now let me show you, just so we get a visual. Obviously, we're not going to go through and do this whole thing. My instance right now is it's a test instance. This isn't one loaded from legacy data. So I can't, I'm not able to show with like, an actual load file. But what I did is I came up with a little example. So we're going to get errors, but we can at least see what this looks like for this part of the process, just to kind of get you a little bit familiar with what you'll be doing. So also, I know if you use ESS, this looks, very familiar too. So that will help. Okay. Excuse me. Let me get my file pulled up here. Okay. So I'm just gonna open it in Excel first. I have it saved. You want to make sure it's saved as a CSV. They do like come over as a CSV, but if you were to like look at anything, I have an Excel version because I wanted to highlight on here. So this is just an example, but this is the basics of what a file like this would look like, and it obviously would have a lot more records, but it has sort of the basics here. Hang on, my Zoom is in the way. Let me move it around here. Okay, so let's go back over. So it has, and this is just basically what the file would look like if you were to look at it after extracting. So it has the IRN information, whatever the username that came over from the legacy software was, and then, their name information. And there are a couple more down here that it's looking at. So this is just my test file. I've modified this, of course, just so we can kind of see what this looks like. And let me make sure I grab the CSV version though. Yes. So you'll select your file. And now at this point, so it opens the file. One thing I want to mention, we did notice during sort of our test loads, some of the bigger files, it can take a minute there. Sometimes it says stalled. And if you see that, just let it go. They all completed. It just takes a minute sometimes. So don't let that worry you if you see that. Generally it was within like 30 seconds or so, just enough to to question. So I wanted to mention that, but that, will update, it'll show here. And then we have the kiosk load option. So this is where I mentioned the list. So this list is what coordinates to, here, let me get back to the top here, to these steps. So district, users, committees, so district, user, and then here's the committee loads. Next comes plan. And so you'll basically be going down the list here. Again, we're skipping ahead to step 2, district user. And then what we want to do is just click import. And so what this does, and that all kind of happened really fast, but what this does is that went ahead and, did a little processing. When you have a file with more than 3 records, that'll take a bit longer. But up here in my downloads, I got a file. I got, an error report file. But I also have the number of errors here, and I have the number of records loaded. So if I have a file where, like, say 100 records are good and 3 of them have an error, those first 100 records will be loaded already. Those will actually load, if it says they're loaded here. So then you can just so then you can just address the errors, and those will be in your load error file. You can, review that file, make your updates there, and then use that to just load in, those additional records that didn't go through the first time. You also get the error messages listed right here on this page. They are also in this error file, but you get the error messages listed on this page, which that's kind of nice, especially when you just have a couple. In this case, my error is that we could not find the employee in USPS with the number. That's because I took the numbers out of my file. So that makes sense. But just for an example of, like, those are the steps, right? That's what the process looks like. And as you go through with your district's data, definitely, if I haven't said it already, recommend test loads. Do a test load of a district. If you have, like, especially a bigger district that uses it, that could make a good test load. And just kind of go through and get a feel for the process. That's what we've been doing on our end as well, to sort of review it and prepare. So yeah, okay, so that is the loading part. Let me make sure, see if I have anything else to say before we move on. Yeah, okay. Okay, so that's it. We'll leave this here. Oh, let's see. Can a load be deleted and reloaded? That's a good question. As far as the records after they get loaded in there, you can't, there's no, like, undo within the application. But you could potentially, like, you know, like, set up a new instance, if you were to, like, delete the instance and start a new one. I'm sure that is a possibility. That would probably be through, like, your hosting, whether you're hosting with MC or locally. That probably would be something to discuss, for that step. Yeah, no problem, no problem. And I mean, and I would think, for, like, if you're gonna do testing a load as well, you would probably set up some kind of test environment for that district. I will say, though, and I'm sure, when you look at setting up the instances, this will be a factor, but just from my experience with what we've done with testing it, you do need to also have a backup of their USPS instance, because even when you're doing it in a test environment, again, it's looking for the USPS number. So even when you're doing a test, the IPDP application will be like an empty instance for you to load into, but that needs to be connected to a backup of the USPS instance for the district. So that's just something to know. Okay. Okay, so that is our whole importing step. I'm sure as you all go through the process, there will be more to that. I think if I were to go through each one of these sections right now, that would probably just be an overload. But as you get started on that, of course, let us know questions. We're happy to help you with the different things you come across, and that ultimately helps us kind of get more information out there for everyone as well. So we are going back, we can close that one. We are going back to the conversion guide. So this is in the appendix. So that is our import steps. This brings us to the post-import steps. And let me grab a drink of water here. So the first step in this like post import section is reviewing the imported information. So again, I mentioned in the import guide, we kind of have it listed, what pages each load is updating, so you could check it along the way. This is kind of just bringing it back and making sure that we have it listed somewhere of reviewing the data. Because as you go through, you'll get the errors for the records, that if you address all the errors, that ensures that the records you've brought in, come in clean, they're accurate, but it doesn't necessarily ensure like everything's there, right? So if there's something missing, it doesn't necessarily know if it's missing, or if something like didn't come in for whatever reason. So this is just like a good bring it back, check and make sure that everything's complete as well. So it's a check your work step, right? So we have it kind of listed. I just have the pages listed here. We'll be looking through a lot of these pages, so I won't, go through every single one, but this is kind of like, hey, here's the page. Whoop, sorry, I'm getting the pop-ups. Here's the page, and then here's some notes about it. So check all the committees. In Legacy IPDP, here's where it can be found. In the new application, IPDP, here's where it can be found. And so I just kind of have that there for reference for you, so that you could go through, and check all the data. And some of these things, I'm sure you could check all of them and review, things that have a lot more records. You may just need to spot check. But that's your list there. Okay. And then step two. Okay, I will also say as we get to this step, some of these steps, I mean, I have them ordered so that you can reference them easy. But as we start going through these, you'll see that some of these next steps like kind of connect. There are pieces here where when you look at the configuration, that's going to kind of impact certain things. And so I've ordered this so that it is hopefully like, a good way, a good like start, but I would definitely say review all these steps beforehand and then you can kind of decide, exactly when you want to do what. You don't have to do everything exactly in this order, but for the organization of the document, this is how I kind of grouped them together in the order that I put them. You'll see what I mean. Okay. So we're gonna look at some of these configurations here. So let me just get set up. Um, so this step is so first I guess I should just say some configuration options weren't able to come over in the extract data. So this is part of the post import steps to review and in some cases update these because some of these you should make sure are set to the district's wishes. Um, And then the configuration options can be found under system configuration. This is a link to the configuration page. And actually, let me open this to the configuration page in the documentation. We are going to go talk through these right now. I'm going to use this as our opportunity to overview this part of the application. But certainly I have a lot more details listed. We have these all mapped out on this page with, okay, what each one is doing, what each field means, and the details there. Also notes on, each one of these sections as far as like from, for like the post import process, what are you looking at and why are you reviewing? So let's go through these, and I'll talk about some of these points as well. We are still logged in. So I am logged in as my user, Kim Ellison. She is our district manager. So that's why she can see the loads, but she can also see the configuration here. Now, at the ITC, when you're doing your post import steps, like you may be in like an admin, which would see all of these the same way. So it works. Okay. Okay, this one's not on the list, but just to touch on it, the application configuration, this is consistent with our other softwares, our other applications. So, mine is a support instance right now, but in their live instance, you would expect to see production and have both of these items checked. So that's sort of like their standard application configuration. When we talk about emails, external notification enabled. So this would have to be enabled for this instance overall to be able to send external notifications or emails. So that's your standard one. Email configuration. So this one's on the list. And this one, I just have some example information in here. Again, this one is consistent with our other applications where you'd have, the default from address is what emails from the software will come from. You'd want to configure this with your SMTP host and port number. If you use a username and password for that, it would go in here. But also application link. So this here, and look, we have a little tooltip that tells you is a link to the application to be provided in various emails. So what you would configure if you wanted to use this is like your actual, URL for the application. You would put this in here, and then when the user gets an email for approval, then it would have the link right in the email, and they could click on the link to navigate to the software. So if they want that to be included, then you would just put that just the main URL in that field, and then you can save it up. The next one is email notification configuration. Let's look at this. So, this is where we start getting into some configuration that affects, things with the approvals and with, who gets what, who's being notified of what. And so, how I look at this is these first two kind of go together. So, activity approvers to receive emails, plan approvers to receive emails. So, this is going to be for which users receive emails for plan and activity actions. So, like when an activity is submitted for approval, who is getting that email? And we have the option for the chairperson, committee members, approving supervisor, and these are determined by different pieces in the application that we'll see. Um, and so how you can configure this is with if you had none of these selected, then nobody would get an email for activity when activity approvals are entered. Or you could have, just one group of people selected, or if all are selected, then all the people qualifying for those groups would receive an email. And that works the same for the plan. So when an activity is submitted, when a plan is submitted. Now these second two then go together and or they're similar. So activity status changes to send emails on. These ones are going to the submitter. So if I enter my plan, I go submit that for approval, and so it'll go to, depending if they're set up for supervisors or if it goes right to the committee. I've submitted my plan for approval. When do I get emails now? So do I only get an email if it's approved? Or do I also get an email if it's returned for modification? If it's denied, do I get an email? Maybe I don't get any emails if I don't have anything checked. And then pre-approved, we'll talk about this as well because there's an option of whether they use that or not. But yeah, so we can select as many or few of those options as we want, and you just kind of check the box and then it adds it on there. So this is one that you want to, review and then, likely discuss with the district and see how they want that set up. At least initially, you could always come modify it. But that's what that one does. All right. All right, forgot password configuration. So this one, I don't know that you need to be like, updating this initially, but I have this one in this section because this is something you may want to consider when we start, when we get to the point later where you're going to, reset passwords for users, and get users logging into the new software. So this first one is minutes until expiration. And so this determines how long the user has to reset their password when receiving the password reset email. Okay. And so if you are sending out the emails to like a full district's worth, resetting their passwords, not everybody may see it within 5 minutes. So if you wanted to, before that process, increase this to say 30 minutes, give everybody a larger buffer. It can always be changed back later, but that may be something that you want to plan for, is to give a little bit more time, at least for that initial password reset. So that's an option. Um, so just something to plan for. And that's one where it's like, again, some of these steps kind of intertwine, so your first pass through looking through this configuration, you might not change it, but you may want to make a note for that. Job status configuration. So this one has to do with what when it connects to USPS. So there's that connection with IPDP and USPS, and I've mentioned how it looks at the employee IDs, for like the import, I guess. But once you're actually, using the new application, one thing it's going to do is it's going to look at certain pieces of information from the employee's USPS job record. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later when we see some of the pieces, but committees that they can submit to, and supervisors that appear on their record as like options, those specifically connect to what they have configured on their jobs, on their positions in USPS. And so what this configuration does is it gives them some flexibility to determine like which of those USPS job records am I looking at? Because in USPS, they could have a variety of position records over a variety of time, right? So, because they may get like a new one each year. And so, do you want it to only like look at the supervisor in the building on the active jobs? Do they manage it where only the active jobs are only ever going to be the ones that should be looked at? Or maybe also inactive? If they have these other statuses, if they have deceased or terminated, maybe there are situations where, they want to show the terminated employees as well. I mean, it kind of logically, I feel like think that it makes sense that it's probably active and inactive, but all the status options are here. If they didn't want to include information from inactive jobs, maybe they want that to be unchecked and just have active be the one that the connection is looking at. So that's the job status configuration. Again, this is like a review and update if needed. Um, and then we'll skip the password expiration. The pre-approval configuration. So, uh, when we start looking through the actual process, we'll look at an example with pre-approval. But pre-approval is basically an option where because they'll create, the plan or the activity and they submit it for approval. But this gives them an additional option for approval submission where they can submit for pre-approval. And then when it comes back, it's pre-approved. After that, they have the option to then submit again for final approval. And so the situation where this may be, maybe relevant, this is the example that we'll look at later, is so say for an activity, right? They want to take a class. And so before they sign up, or they want to go to a conference, right? So before they sign up for that activity, they can enter the activity, they can submit it for pre-approval, and then that would be able to say, okay, yes, this will count if you do this activity. And so then you would get it pre-approved. After they attend the event and they have, the agenda to verify they went, they would be able to update the activity and then submit it for final approval. And once it's approved, once it's finally approved, then it'll count towards their credits on their plan. So that sort of gives them an extra step that they can do ahead of time to say like, hey, is this okay? Or that sort of thing. So if they want, it's available for plans or activities or both. You just check the box for whichever one they would want it for. Or if they don't want pre-approvals at all, they can uncheck both. We're going to leave it on for activities because, again, that's the example we're rolling with today. So let me save that up. And then I'm skipping just a couple of these, but the last one I want to talk about is the supervisor approval configuration. So this controls whether the supervisor fields show when submitting an activity or a plan. So I mentioned, with the job status, like looking at approving looking at like the supervisor from USPS. So this is an option they have. Some districts may just want to leave supervisors completely out of the equation, and they can, as far as like approvals. But it basically adds a field called approving supervisor to either the activities or the plan. If you didn't want it on either, you would uncheck the boxes. If you want it on one, you could do that. We'll leave it on both. And so we'll see the field when we go in here. Okay. So that's the configuration. I've got a couple more things in these post-import steps. So the next one is approvals notifications. So some of these steps coordinate right to the email notifications and the email setup step that we saw in the configuration. So that needs to be set up in order for users to receive emails. This step is in here though to kind of review everything together. So email configuration, email notification configuration. On the application configuration, you want to make sure the external notification box is enabled, which for production instances, it will be by default. And then once all of those pieces are in place, under the system menu, there is a test email option. And so once you're ready and that's set up, you could come in here and send yourself a test email just to make sure that all the pieces are in place so that does it actually send, right? Like, is it actually sending an email out? So you can come in here and just put your own email and do send email. Obviously mine I did not have fully configured to send, but I did before. And so let me show you. Here is a test email. And so this one, obviously it's really simple. It'll just say whatever is in the subject and body of the email, and then it'll just send so that okay, everything we have set up for the notifications is good to go. The software can send an email, and then once users start using it, they'll receive the notifications for the items that are configured. And then last is reviewing users. So when it comes to the users, there may be different things that the district wants to review that you want to review at the ITC before everything gets, started and going. So this is kind of just, a grouping of that sort of thing. So the first one is review roles. So you want to review the roles assigned to each user. All users are going to get a user's role. And then the additional roles for IPDP are consistent with legacy IPDP roles. So there's a committee member role and a district manager role. However, if they are using supervisor approvals, so if they're turning that configuration, if they're having that configuration on for supervisor approvals, they do need to assign the supervisor role. So manually, or manually could be through the user page or through a spreadsheet, which we'll talk about in a second here, but that does need to be assigned. And then further information on each of the roles, we do have that here. Let me make sure this goes to the right spot. We'll click there. So we have a sort of a grid that has each of the roles and sort of a definition of that access. Luckily, there are not too many for IPDP. The roles are pretty simple here, so we like that. And so before we go to the next step, let's take this opportunity to look at our users grid too. So here's your users grid. You have your username, first and last name. I just have a bunch of test users in my instance here. I added, so you can use, the 3 bars up here to add columns to your grid. So I added the roles to my grid. So this would be an easy way that you could review, the roles that your different users have. And so again, sorry, I'm zoomed in a little bit. I'm zoomed in, yeah, for the purpose of the training, I'm zoomed in more on my screen. So we're a little condensed here, but I would have my roles column. And then if I wanted to review things like let's go in here and say, okay, I want to look at my committee members. Which of my users have committee member assigned? And I can filter my grid to see, okay, here are the committee members. Here are the people that came in with the roles of committee member. Check, check, check. That's my committee. That's great. And so that can be an easy way to review that. You can also export the grid items. So if I were to export this, it'll export it to a spreadsheet that I can then review. Updating usernames or other user info. So then if you wanted to from there, because the usernames are going to be consistent with the legacy usernames, if they want those to be updated, or maybe even adding the supervisor role, that can be done, and we have the mass load page gives some further details there. This is a big note though. Usernames should not be updated until all the imports are completed. So at this point, we're talking about post-import steps. All the files have been uploaded. I know that user import is one of the first ones though. But again, that information does tie together with like later loaded files. So that is something you don't want to be changing until everything from legacy is in there. Um, and so here's your steps, extract the data, update the fields desired. There is the user ID column. That's going to be the first one that comes out when you export. It's a bunch of letters and numbers. You want to make sure that you keep that in there, especially if you're changing the username, because that's going to tie the record together. Um, but yeah, so that can be done as part of the process. Okay. And then the last thing on our post import steps here is the bulk reset passwords. So this is another option available on the users grid. This allows a mass reset of passwords for all the selected users. This is only applicable for local authentication, not external authentication, which we have a link on our users page, um, I believe, linking to the external authentication information. But anyways, the reset passwords is only available if they're doing passwords, through the application. Um, when they do that, users receive an automated email with a link to reset their password. So certainly before this step, you want to make sure that that test email goes through to make sure when you do this, everyone's going to get their email. And then you also may want to review that forgot password timing to make sure that they have adequate time to get everyone to reset. Um, and then it won't work for any admin users though. So let's look at this real quick. So what I could do, so if I came in and checked, I check all my users and then want to do the bulk reset passwords, it does tell me, admin can't be selected, so admin is not on my list. But all my other users, it does go ahead and show me all lists of, the users. And if these had a password expiration date, it would show it. And then if I confirmed, I could, mass reset their passwords all at once. I'm not going to do that, but that's how simple it is. Um, so I think that would be like, definitely like a final step before you're letting everybody in. The other thing, I just to go back one step, just make sure I get everything in here, is the other thing I thought of with this update usernames and other info. You could update this via spreadsheet. The external authentication checkbox is one of those fields, so that could potentially be updated with this step as well for those that do use external authentication. Okay. Okay, I know it's a lot, but that is the conversion guide. So those are our steps there. Let me just double check post import steps. Okay. Okay, do we have any questions about any of this information so far? Okay. Well, As we go, if you have questions, definitely let me know. Feel free to put them in the chat. I do have it open, and I can definitely answer those as we go through. I think what we'll do at this point is I know we've been going for a while, so let's take a 10-minute break until 10:30. And when we come back, I'm going to switch gears and we'll go through and we'll be in the software. We're going to go through basically the life cycle of a plan. We'll log in, see what it looks like for different users, and really get a handle on the software. So I'll let you go and we'll meet back soon. Okay, welcome back. We'll get started and go through a software overview now. Um, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through a couple different users. I'm going to start by logging back in as our district manager user. And we're going to look at some of the setup pieces that a district manager may like add or maintain. If they did import the data from legacy IPDP, then a lot of these pieces may be there already. But in the future, if they need to update them or add new options. This is something that the user may go in and update. So we're going to look at those pieces first. Um, if I go to our documentation and go to the appendix, user procedures, the district manager setup procedures. These, if you want to follow along or reference back, these are basically the things I'm going to be kind of covering in this section. So creating a committee, we'll hop around a little bit on the order and do a plan template, review activity options and verification methods. I'm not going to go any more into users than we did previously, but this is where we're going for this current section. So let's log in as Kim. Okay. Now, we were kind of looking at some configuration options in here. Before we just jump into pages again with Kim, I wanted to do a little overview of the home page. So when we get to talking about the approvals, you'll see we have, approval views on this home page that we'll be taking a look at. And then we have the menu. On the left-hand side, we have purple. Everything is purple in this application, which I love. So we have each of our different sections here, and any of their menus. If they have additional options, they would be able to open these and see further information, further pages under those sections. The other thing that I wanted to show here real quick with Kim, and this is for any user, is there is a profile option that they can see by clicking this little arrow next to their name. And so if we look at the profile, this gives, okay, here's their name, here's the email address. So that's where they'd receive notifications for the application. And then it also shows them the roles that they have. So if you have, the committee members, you may want to check, make sure they have this. I mean, if anybody ever needed to see what roles they had, that is visible to them. We also have a dark mode. So if I check dark mode, it changes and I could save this and it would change the application just for this user, So this is my personal um, decision as a user if I wanted to do dark mode and any of these pages all translate right to that dark mode view. So for consistency, I'm going to turn dark mode off, but I love that we have that option. And then they could also change their password from here. So again, this is a consistent like sort of user profile option that they have. All right. So for our district manager, we're going to look at the committees. So again, this comes over from from legacy if they have that, but they may just have one committee. Some districts may have multiple, they may have committees for buildings. So if we wanted to create a committee, we can. So for our test today, we are going to create one. Our Maple Tree Committee. And as we're going through here, so we can pick a chairperson of this committee. Now, when I start opening and looking at these users, the people that are available here are active users that have the committee member role. So I won't see all my users. If you remember when we were on that user grid earlier, I filtered to just my committee members. So it's just showing me that same list of users that qualify. So Tara is our chairperson. So we're going to go ahead and select her. Building codes. So this is where, kind of mentioned in those loads, like we were looking at building codes that come over and connect to USPS building codes. So this is where I would be able to set, if I have the committee, if I have multiple committees and they're for certain buildings, I would be able to select, which buildings this should apply to. And I can only have the building on one committee at a time. So if they're on another committee, they won't show in this list. But let's just
There we
select,
go.
let's pick a bunch here. Oh, did someone have a question? Okay. So we'll go ahead and select the building codes. Oops. Yeah, there we go. And then from there, so they'll list in here. From there, we want to select the users that we're going to be on this committee then. And so again, same thing. Our dropdown is only going to show qualifying users to be on a committee based on their user setup. And so we can go ahead and select if we want to select one or we want to select multiple users. We select them in our box here and then we click to add. And they show in our list at the bottom. And so we could have a whole list of, however many committee members this committee has. If I did want to remove somebody, I could just check the box and click remove from grid, and then that would remove the user from my list as like a committee member, right? And then there is an option for attachments on here. So we'll take a look at that. But I'm actually going to create this first. The attachment part is what's going to work with document store to store those attachments in the background. And so my test instance is a little bit, I had set this up beforehand and I didn't want to tempt fate with updating for that. So what we're going to do is look at it like through edit mode, and then it's not going to save. So we have the the information here. So if I go to edit a committee, so say something changes later, I can come in here, edit the name. I could still, go remove users if I needed to. Or say I'm like, okay, wait, I had my committee set up, but now I forgot to upload the committee guidelines. So what I would do is click upload files. And that would bring me to my files where I could go find a file to upload. And select that, click open, and what it's going to do is it's going to load it and show it over here under file name. Now, if I were to save this up, it would be available to download then from this committee. It could be deleted. With the committee attachments, there can only be one. So if I were to upload another one, it would replace it. A couple of the other places we see attachments later, there can be multiple attachments. So this one is just one document for the committee guidelines. So that's what that would look like. Okay, so that's our committee. Let's see. Okay, so next, let me just get my notes, make sure I say everything I want to say for you. Okay. Okay, so next we're going to a plan template. So under plans, we're going to go to plan templates. Now, what these plan templates are is, the users are going to go in and they're going to create their own plan. So that's basically like they're filling out, a form. They're filling out, here's what my goals are, here's what my focus is, and this is the license that I want to apply this to, right? But what the plan templates lets them do is really customize what that, form looks like, what that application looks like. And so the first thing in here is we have the template label. So this is our plan name. So let's do Maple Tree Plan. And then we have some options we can configure. So plan focus label. So what this is like, what is the header going to be on the plan focus? When my district person, when my teacher or whoever is going to be submitting their plan, when they have to fill out what their plan focus is, Do I want that to have a custom label? Or if you leave it blank, it'll just say, plan label. So let's do this. I'm just going to enter something so that we can see where that is when we look at the form. And then this is where we could pick like a specific committee. So what's the committee that this plan template is going to be for? And so I can pick the committee that we just created. The next part here is setting the minimum and maximum goals. Okay, so this is going to determine when that employee fills out their plan, how many goals do they need to at least have, and how many goals can they have overall? So if I were to increase, so let's say they have to have at least 3 goals, and then you can see I have goal labels down here. But if I were to say, okay, they have to have at least 3, but they could have 4, or they could have 5, or they could have 6, they could have anywhere in between that number, you'll notice as I'm clicking that, I get more labels that added to the bottom here. And so what these labels down here allow me to do is basically I could set prompts for like what those goals could be, like what's the goal prompt, and then they would answer that. Or I could leave these just as is and it would just say goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, So they don't have to fill these out if they want to keep it simple, but this gives some customization. So let me see. I think we're doing 4. Yes. Okay, so we're gonna do a minimum of 3, but a maximum of 4. Okay, and then I give myself a little something to start. So we're gonna put in some labels. Again, if we don't really have to touch these labels, but just so we can kind of see where this information goes, I'm gonna fill this out. So, they might have something like, what goals do you have for education this year? Let's say, what goals do you have for improving your skills this year? Let's see. What goals do you have for training this year? And then maybe we have like other goal details. What this we're totally just doing a test, but just give us some things that sound okay, right? So what other goal details do you want to share? And so that gives them, like, instead of just having, they could have goal 1, 2, 3, but this way, like if they wanted to pick from a list and say, give prompts that they could select from, they can. And we'll see when we enter a plan how this looks for them. The next thing we can add is focus area groups. And sorry, just a second. So the next thing we have is focus area groups, and these in the legacy software were called domains. Okay. So this would be here. Let's add a group. So we click add a group. And then we have the template, new template group. This is going to be the group description. And then we can add focus areas within here. So this could be something. Here's my example. Okay, so this group is for leadership focuses. And then let's add a focus area and say, okay, so one of these options is to improve communication skills. And then I could add, another focus area on here. Efficient time management. And we're just gonna put some of these in here because again, then when we go to fill out the plan, I want us to have some things to see. So that is one. So we have one group here and see that. So that updates to show this is my leadership group now that I've given it a name. And I can add another group. And so this one, let's do here. I'm going to copy and paste a couple things, save us some typing time here. Communication and collaboration. Let's add some focus areas. And I just kind of grabbed some standard descriptions for these ones. So and really what we're showing here, right? So I'm trying to get us some examples so that we can have like a little bit of an idea of what this may actually look like. But really the point here is that these are 100% customizable, right? So they can go through and have the focus areas that they would want to have listed. They can be different for each template type, right? So they could have a template for like their teacher template, and these would have education related focus areas and goals. They could have a treasurer template, and that would have, financial related, financial integrity, different focus areas for that. And so they would be able to set this up however they'd like. They could have, more focus areas. We're going to stick with two, but that's how they would set up their plan template. So let's go ahead. We'll click create on this. And now we have this in our list. So we have Maple Tree Plan A, and we'll come back to see how that looks when we get into a user. The other things we're going to look at while we're in this district manager access is there's a couple of things similar to this that can be set up for activities. And then when a user enters the activity, it'll use those pieces. So the first thing is activity option groups. And so for these, what these will be basically like checkboxes that they can use when they're entering an activity to just give a little bit more detail about what the activity is. So let's go ahead. I'm going to just click create to create a new one. And what we would do is we would give it a name. I'm just going to stick with independent study. And so we have the drop down here for this is the type. And so multi-select will actually have checkboxes where they can check multiple options. Select will be like the radial button, like the circle select, where they can only select one from the list. So we're going to do that. We're going to just do, they can only select one of these makes sense. And at the bottom here, we would say, okay, add an option, gives me a little pop-up, and I'm gonna say, okay, what do I want my option to be? So for this first one, we're gonna say a self-taught book course, right? Because it's an independent study, right? So a self-taught book course, and we can give it a description if we want. A book course that the employee completes. Okay, great. That looks good. When you're creating everything, by the way, I don't mean to skip over this, but the checkbox always defaults to active. And then we'll take a look at like inactive options in a minute here. But for the sake of this, yeah, we keep seeing those because obviously when we're creating, we want the things we make to be active. But yeah, so we create the option, we click create, and then that adds that to our list here. I can add another option. Let's get two on here so we have something to work with. Self-paced online class. I have my little description. I'm not going to type out the whole thing here. So a class offered via the internet that is completed based on a pace determined by the employee. Okay, so let's add that to our list. Now, a couple things I want to point out on this grid because so they could go through and add as many options as they wanted to this activity option group, right? Uh, we can view, if we wanted to pull back up and view what we had entered here, we have an edit option. So if I come in and I wanted to edit this, this edit option is only available in this part where I'm creating. Because, so say I have like a bunch of options and I realize a typo and I want to go back and edit it. After I hit create, I'm not able to edit these anymore. However, you can set a line inactive. So instead of like editing later on, I could inactivate one and then just add a new option with like the correct information. And so then that would like switch it out for one that's correct. I can also use these arrows to change the order. So if I had like a whole list and I entered them and then I'm like, wait, I want to put them in alphabetical order or whatnot, you can change these options and then that'll affect the order of which they show when a user is entering an activity. Let's see. So, okay, so that's the activity option group. Let's create that. We'll have that out there. Um, and then the other one is activity verification methods. Oh, before we move on from activity option groups. Okay, so the other thing I want to mention about this is um, some of these, if they had these in legacy, then these will come over. I've already seen a district in our testing that didn't have any of these in legacy, so this is one where, maybe they didn't use these, maybe this would be blank. So, I just wanted to mention that. I don't know how consistent that is, but I thought it was interesting to see on one of the ones we tested. So, and actually, while I'm here, let me show you. So now, see, I have the two independent studies. This one is my active filter. This is not active. If I wanted to, and this is consistent with the grids, if I wanted to make a record inactive, I could just select that on the grid, and then I have this make inactive option at the top here. So if I wanted to switch these around, and that would inactivate the entire activity option group. However, if I wanted to come into like a specific group and then edit like the options within that, I could edit this and then make, just one of these inactive. And that would be within the group. And when we see these actually on an activity, I think that'll be a little bit more clear. So, I don't want to get too in the weeds there, but I just kind of want to show those options like as we go through. Okay. Okay, so now let's switch to activity verification method. And so what we're gonna do, so these, when we create an activity, this is basically how should they verify that they did the event, right? And so you can see our examples are things like agenda, brochure, certificate of attendance. And all of this is going to be compiled into a dropdown that the user selects from when they create an activity. So we're going to add a new one here, and I'm going to say, let's add a syllabus. So, if they submit an activity, they're able to choose a syllabus as a way to verify that activity. And we go ahead and create that. That adds to our list. And so now that will be available in the dropdown when a user creates an activity. Okay. Any questions on any of those setup pieces? Okay, hearing none. I know it's a lot. I know we're going through a lot today. All right. Okay, so where we're at now is we're going to switch over and I'm going to look at a standard user. Our standard user is Thomas Blackwell. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through and as Thomas Blackwell, we're going to enter a plan. So this is what the employee would see, just a standard employee, a standard user, when they go in to make their plan. All right. So here's their homepage. Now, the first thing I want to point out is, so we have just the relevant options on our side menu. So I have my activities, my plans, my professional certifications. Again, I do have like the profile where I could view the user information, change a password if I needed to. But where we're going is to my plans. Now, the situation that Thomas is in is so this user has previous plans that have been entered out here. My old plans, there was one that was denied, but the other ones were archived. So I don't have a current plan. And this page itself will look different when first navigating to it based on if the user has an active plan or not. And so because this user doesn't have an active plan, I get this grid view and I also have this create option because I'm right in the right spot to be able to start a new one. So I'll click create. The first thing it's going to have me do is select which plan template am I using. And so this, we looked at the district manager setting up a plan template. So this is where, based on what they had, they would be able to select from that custom list that the district has set up. So this tells me, the name of the plan template and the committee that it's linked to. We want to pick our Maple Tree Plan A. And what that's going to do then is it immediately switches our view and it updates so that we can start entering information. Now, some of the things that we had configured in this plan template, we can already see our header here, our plan focus label is customized. And when we get to the focus areas and goals, we'll see the custom setup that we have for this template as well. So as the user, I'm going to start to create my plan here. And they can the plan name is really whatever they want. This is their kind of like custom, plan name. What I've seen is that usually these are like maybe the year range. So say this is going to be like a 5-year plan. So they may include like the years in there if they want, so they can, reference back if they're looking at old plans and know exactly which one it's for. But they don't have to do that. That's just whatever you want. Approving supervisor. So back when we looked at the configuration and said, does this district use supervisors? This is where this field will either show or not based on a district's configuration. And when I use this drop down, if I have a supervisor that is defined on my USPS position record, it will show the supervisor there. Now, some employees may have multiple active jobs with multiple supervisors on those positions, and so they may have more than one in this list. Or if they have no supervisors defined, it will say, like just right in this box, it'll say like no supervisors. So let's pick Ricky. He's our supervisor. And we can, yeah, so we could also leave that blank. If we didn't want to have the supervisor selected, that is an option too. The next thing we have is our plan objective. And so this is where it sort of connects generally to the license renewals. So we're going to pick a 5-year renewal, but you see we have 1 through 5, a 5-year transition, or other as an option. So we'll pick our objective there. And then these next couple are like, these are like text boxes where they can type in. So what's my plan focus? You know, my focus is to renew my license. I could add comments if I wanted to. And then I switch over to focus areas. Oh, I should probably just mention this now. So as we're going through, actually, you know what? Put a pause on this. Standard user, under the user procedures. Okay, so we're in the appendix, user procedures, standard user procedures. If you want to follow along or reference back, these general steps that I'm going through at this point are creating a plan. And the reason I kind of got to this is because as we're going through here, we haven't noted these boxes do have character limits, but the plan focus like a maximum of 1,000 characters, so they're all pretty good as far as how many characters they have. I did want to make a note though while we're looking at this part, and we have a note after all of these details. Fields with character limits will not allow more than the maximum number of characters to be entered. The one thing I would say is if they copy and paste, hopefully they're not, hopefully they're typing in here. But if they're copy and pasting like a big amount of text into these fields or the goal fields, if they hit that maximum, it will just only accept characters up until that maximum. So just want to watch out for that. I would say I'm not sure how common that is for anyone to have that many characters, but just so you know how that works. All right. So next we have our focus areas, and this is where we had, configured these. So here's leadership, and we could go through and say, okay, so this year I want to focus on improving communication skills and promote knowledge sharing, and I could check any of these that apply. Communication and collaboration, excellent. And if I had more groups, so, I just had added the 2 groups to my template, but if I had more groups, they would line up as boxes on this page, and I could, scroll through and update any of these that I need to. Next, we have our goals. And so this also kind of has this box view. And so right now, no goals are currently added. Click the add button to add one. So down here we have add goal, and this is where I'll click in a minute to select my goal, to select, the different goals I want to answer. But also notice this. So when we set that plan template, we said minimum of 3, maximum of 4, right? So the minimum of 3 translates directly here. So 0 of 3 required. If we set our minimum to 1, this would say 0 of 1 required. So this number specifically is coming directly from that plan template setup. When I click add goal, I get a little pop-up list, and this list that shows here, these are the goal labels that we entered. And so again, this is where if they didn't want to customize the goal labels, it would just say, it would be a list, goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, goal 4. But we added little question prompts. So let's see. So then we could go through and say, all right, what goals do we have for education? And I could fill this out and add another one, or I could just like pick the ones I want to fill out here. What other goals do we have? Okay, so there's my list of goals that I would want to answer. And I think these ones have 2,000. Again, it's listed in the walkthrough, but I'm pretty sure the character limit on these ones is 2,000, so even more room. When they fill out these goals, the answer to each goal must be unique. So they can't just put the same exact thing in every goal. And so when you're, if you're testing through as well, to keep that in mind. So I'm not gonna do like an actual sample of an answer here. Uh, other than this. This is my first goal. And I can tab through. This is my second goal. Let's tab through. So I've got my text entered, in my goal. So that's set there. The next, and so as we go through, basically they just kind of navigate through these different tabs here. I would pick then my professional certifications. I have a better example of this with the activity. I'm in a test instance, so I don't actually have any certifications linked, but in an actual instance, this will connect through the imports from Legacy. You can bring over their historical certifications. We do have a connection that will, on a regular basis, pull current license information. So that will be available. They would click a drop down and it would show just their certifications that are issued, not expired, but like the issued ones currently. They can pick multiple. When they're setting up a plan, they definitely want to pick, any that they might want to apply activities towards, they would want to pick at this step. So similar to the same mechanic we've seen with the drop downs before, like with adding users, they would go through and pick any that apply, and they would click add, and then they would show on this grid. Similarly, so attachments, they could add attachments on here, and they would be able to like upload the files would show over here, and they can add multiple attachments to this plan if they wanted to. So once we get here, we can go ahead and create. The other thing is, so when I'm creating my plan, the plan has some flexibility where a lot of things can be edited afterwards, even after like it's being approved. We had gotten feedback from our focus groups that, because like in this case, the plan might be 5 years long, 5 years long. So there may be things like over time that the users would, want or need to edit on their plan. And so There is an edit option here, and that can be used throughout the process. Um, so yes, that is available. The other thing to note at this step is notice now, so my plans, this was the view I clicked on earlier, because I have a current plan, now when I navigate to this page, that's what I'm going to see first. So this looks a little bit different than it did when I first came in here, just because I actually have my current plan now and I could view through this. I do have a tab for all plans at the top. So this takes us to the grid of what it looked like kind of when we first came in here. There's no create button like there was because I have a plan, but I can still see all of my past plans out here. I just default to looking at my current plan because that's what's relevant for me right now. Um, the other thing too is I have another tab on here that is my approval trail. So right now, I've just initiated my plan. I haven't actually submitted it for approval yet, but as it goes through the process, then this approval trail is going to track anything that happens, any notes that are made along the way regarding my plan approval. So the user can, the employee can go see that at any time to view their current plan. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and submit for approval. We are ready at this step, so I'm going to click submit for approval at the bottom here. Um, Now we had set in our configuration, we said no pre-approvals on plans, only on activities. That was part of our configuration. So this screen is just giving me the option for a final approval. We'll look at a pre-approval situation when we get to the activities, but for now, this is our one option. We can add a note if we want to. Please approve my plan. And then I go ahead and submit it, and you see my approval trail updates. I can see that it was submitted for final approval. And here's the note I gave them, and here's the timestamp. Okay. So that's the first step of the process. First step of the process is done. Let's sign out now. We'll sign out of Thomas Buckle because Thomas's situation is that he's gonna wait. He's gonna wait until his plan, gets approved, or maybe if it gets returned with any notes that he needs to modify, he could do that. Also, when he submits that for approval, any of the groups that were configured to receive email notifications, they would receive an email notification if it's set up that way for that there's a plan that's been submitted for approval. All right. Okay. So, let me just make sure I get the right person here. Yes. Yes. So we're going to log in now. We picked his supervisor, Ricky Anderson. So let's log in as his supervisor now and see what this looks like. Okay. Now, first of all, we'll notice that, and we kind of saw this with our district manager, but first of all, with our supervisor, we'll notice that our home page looks a bit different than our regular user, right? So we have tabs here for activity approvals and for plan approvals. And so the first tier of this, either activity or plan, would be the first step. For now, we're focusing on plan approvals. So let me switch over to that. And then we have an option here for supervisor pre-approvals and supervisor final approvals. I apologize, this is my test data, so I had pre-approvals on at one point. So that is my that's my bad. I had one in there that had been submitted for pre-approval. So sorry. Today we're just looking at final approvals. So let me click to go to that tab, supervisor final approval. And on this list now, I would be able to see any that, me as a supervisor, any plans that are awaiting my approval out here. So this is one option for seeing the approvals. We're going to take a look at, I want to go through the tabs too. So we are going to move from here before we actually approve, but this is very nice that everything is all in one place on the homepage for them. Um, So let's take a look real quick. I'm going to open the plan section for this user. So again, this user, they're configured in USPS as the supervisor on Thomas's position record. Also, we can see based on this on Rocky's position record, they are a supervisor for. So when they come into plans, now this user, Ricky, also has a section for my plan. So Ricky might have a plan entered and they could see, just like Thomas did, they could see all of their own plan information. But they also have supervisor plans, and this is because Ricky has the supervisor role. So if I come in here, this is like a view only section. So I'm just viewing the plan information, but I can see the plan information for any of the users that I'm listed as the supervisor on. So, the approvals are one thing, and we'll get there. I can see approving supervisor in this column. But on this grid, I have the ability to just see whether I'm approving or not, see the plans for any of the users that I'm listed as the supervisor on. And this grid, so you could filter or sort these. So if I maybe just want to see the approved plans, for those that I supervised so far, I could do that. If I wanted to see something in other status, if they're trying to look something up, they can. So this is kind of just like a view only informational grid. Next, let's open the approvals. Okay. So now we're gonna hop to the plan approvals. And again, the same information that we just saw on the main page, but I kind of like this because um it's out here. Uh it's out here in kind of like a condensed, specific format. So we have the supervisor final approvals here, and I have listed. So here's the plan. So here's Blackwell's plan that I was looking at. These ones are showing me the ones submitted for final approval. And then I would be able to come through, I could view, so I can view Thomas's plan, go look through any of this information here. Here's the focus areas he chose. Here's the answer to the goals. And I could go through and view all of this info. And then as the supervisor, when I'm set to go, I can say, okay, yep, we're going to approve his plan. We approve. Looks good to me. And we can go ahead and give that our supervisor approval. So now it's not in his final approvals grid anymore. If I go up to plans, supervisor plans, then I can still see here and look, supervisor approved. So this changes the status. So it's supervisor approved. So if they're using approving supervisors, that's step one. Now, the plan is not actually approved yet. So a committee member still needs to approve this plan. So this is where we do some switching again, and I'm going to sign out. And next, we're going to log in as Holly. So if you remember when we set up our committee, we included Holly. I double checked that because we want to be able to log in as Holly Carter, and now we're going to see what this looks like for a committee member. So again, Holly has, approvals listed on this homepage. She has the menu on the side here. And for now, we're focusing on plans. So let me open this up. And so instead of supervisor plans, now Holly has district plans. And this is going to basically, it looks, the same concept, the same grid where I can look up, any of the plan information. I could filter by status. I could filter by, user, type of renewal. Any of these columns I could go ahead and apply filters to if I wanted to. However, because Holly is a committee member, this is the district plan view, I can see all plans for everybody in my district. So instead of like Ricky being limited to just supervisors, I'm sorry, just those he supervises, and Thomas, who was an individual user, could only see his own plans. Now we've got the view where the committee member can see everything. The other thing that we have here is users without a plan. without an approved plan, sorry. And this is basically just a listing showing any users that don't yet have a plan that's approved, but it's out there. So here's Blackwell, here's Thomas Blackwell. Our user is on the list because their plan is not yet approved. But I could go through and see, who's out there. All right, and then we're gonna go to the plan approvals on the side here. And so I've got, a couple different users out here. I have Blackwell's plan, I have Ricky's plan, Rocky's out here. And so one thing that may be relevant, and again, a lot of this is gonna depend on like how the district has their configuration set up, and also their processes. So when I look at approval status, Holly is a committee member. Holly can approve any of these plans and they're set to go. Like I could check all of these right now and approve them, and they would be final approved, whether their supervisor approved, or, like whether a supervisor did or not. However, if the district, maybe their process, maybe their policy is that they want to have the supervisors approve these first, then maybe I would do something like this. Maybe I would filter my grid to supervisor approved. And then I would only want to select the ones that are supervisor approved and, then approve those ones. And so if I were to, I'm using this checkbox now instead of like the individual view and approve, I could use this select option on the grid. And so I add it filter. I only want the supervisor approved ones selected. At the top here, have the ability to approve, return, or deny, for any that I have selected on my grid. So that might be, obviously we're looking through one specific plan approval right now, but I'm sure that at the point where people are submitting their plans, the committee members and the supervisors are managing, a good volume of plans that they're working on. And so, that could be an option as far as like, being able to select multiple, like of a certain status. And then we're going to click to approve, and this will approve, if I had multiple selected, it would approve any selected records. So it says, are you sure you want to approve this plan? Looks good. Let's approve it. And we are all set, okay? So now Blackwell does not show in this list. If I go to users without an approved plan, you'll see Thomas Blackwell no longer in this list because he's approved. He's got his approved plan, so he is all set there. All right. All right, so let's sign out of Holly for now. I'm gonna go back in. We're going back in with Blackwell. Let's take a look and see where we're at here. Excuse me. All right, so now I can go to my plans. And let me take a look first. I want to look at this approval trail. So if we go to the approval trail, now we can see, each step in the process is logged. So here's where I submitted for approval, my supervisor. And, also just to note, those notes along the way are all logged here. So, if there are certain things that they are commenting to each other, that would be included. Question, will there be an option to email employees from the grid, employees without an approved plan? Um, so on the committee member view with the approved like employees that don't have an approved plan, I'm not sure. I'll have to check on that. I'll see if we have a JIRA issue to update. Um, but we can make note of that. Yeah. Yeah, there isn't right now, but will there be? That's a good question. We'll check. Okay. Okay. So now that Thomas has an approved plan, what he can do is he's able to submit activities towards his plan. Before we switch over to activities, I want to show you on this view now. So this is basic info. Once the plan is created, I also have an option, a field rather, that shows now, and it's called total CEUs. So the total CEUs is now available to view. And what'll happen is as Thomas adds in his activities, once the activities get approved, they'll be added to this total CEU count. And so that keeps track on the plan. And so he can see it from right here. on the grids, so like on, my all plans grid or like the supervisor plans grid, there is also a column all the way over here on the side for total CEUs. So that keeps the calculation, and then that way that's an easy reference that they have throughout, the year or the 5 years as they're stacking up those activity credits. All right, let's jump into activities. So my activities is where we're going next. And similar to like what we looked at when we had first, initiated the plan, is we have the grid showing any of my previous activities that I've submitted. And I can also go ahead and create a new activity. Okay. Now, the first thing I want to point out is we'll notice when this pops up, plan name, it goes ahead and it populates my plan name in here. So I have to have the current approved plan first. And then when I submit the activity, it knows that it's going towards that plan. Awesome. Awesome. I see Mary has put the link to the JIRA issue in the chat. Thank you so much, Mary, for that question that we just talked about. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, so it'll always select the plan that is their current plan, and it'll show it up here. And I can't change this. So this is just like a read only for reference. This is the plan that I'm going to apply this activity to. For the activity name, we're going with an online class. Let's give that a go. And then we'll do the dates. So this could be like 1 day or a date range. Let's say for this example, okay, so I want to take this online class. In this district, I have pre-approvals set up for my activities. And so at this point, we're mid-July. This class is actually the last week of August. So let me put in my date range. This is a 1 week class, right? So let me put in my date range, but we're gonna submit this for pre-approval because I want to make sure I can take this class first. Is this class gonna count? We're not gonna submit it to our supervisor this time. We'll leave Ricky out of the equation, so we can leave that blank. But let's put it in a description. So So the class starts in August. I'm just gonna, make sure that description is there. I can get the verification on the first day of class. The focus is technology learning. And then so I would enter, whatever details that I want on my basic info here. And then I have progress. So this is going to be, okay, so how is the progress for this class? What is the, calculation for this class counted as? And so I can choose semester hours, quarter, contact hours, or continuing education units. Let's just do, for the sake of this, actually, let's pick quarter hours maybe, and then we'll do one. And basically whatever progress unit that they choose, once this activity gets approved, the software will do the calculation based on like the LPDC calculations that they have like out there for the conversion. And it'll convert this progress unit to CEUs to add to that total on the plan. So no matter what they choose, that'll get converted into a consistent measurement for that counter that ultimately ends up on the plan. Vendor is optional. This could be like who's giving the class. This could be like Technology Institute. I don't know, whatever that is. Maybe it's like maybe it's the school that the course is through or the group that the course is through. And then verification method. So this drop down is made up of those verification methods that we configured as the district manager. So this drop down can be completely different per district. This is whatever they would accept as verification methods. We had added syllabus when we were logged in as the district manager. So let's select that. So we need to have that. I can add comments if I want, I mean, I don't have to, but just put something in there. Maybe they want to make sure that when they're doing the pre-approval, they're like, hey, I will get you this. And then next we have option groups. So again, we had configured, so independent study, this was one of those option groups that we had configured. So I don't know if this really applies here because independent study is not actually independent study. This is the one we added, but doesn't really qualify as a self-paced online class. So we're actually not going to use the ones that we added. But let's say maybe it is, okay, so course type, we have some options here. Let's pick like a college course, or maybe professional. Let's pick professional. And again, all of these are custom options. So a lot of these are just like test options that I've entered. But they may have two or three categories. Again, this is the one that some people don't have any. But this is just like a further way to define the activity or categorize it if they have these set up. So we'll just pick professional, leave it at that. And then next we have professional certifications. So again, we have this drop down where they would be able to pick their certifications to apply it to. Because this is my test instance, I don't have real users. I mean, it all ties through to like the actual person. So that's why I don't have them in test. But a couple things that are important here. So first of all, this time when I use this drop down for applies to certifications, this will show me any certifications I had selected on the plan. And so that's why when I mentioned earlier, like when they're making the plan, they may have multiple they'd select. They may want to, make sure like if that's a list and then this activity applies to just one, of those. I'm also, oops, I'm also pulling up a screenshot here. And so this is an example of like if they were to select one and then have it listed, have it listed in the grid. So this is the type of information. This is just an example, a little bit better example of what this would look like, having the classification, license, type, and dates. And so it would have, a record in this list for the certificate or certificates that they're choosing to apply this activity specifically to. And then again, we have attachments. So, similar to what we saw with the committee, we could, upload attachments. We could have a list on here. I'll show you an example again too when we look at this in the next step. But for now, because I think Blackwell, Thomas Blackwell is pretty clear, like the syllabus, we don't have it yet. So we're not going to add an attachment just at this point, but let's create this activity. Oh, I'm sorry, my throat's going a little bit. I've been talking quite just a little bit this morning. Okay. So, yes, we created our activity. The next step is to submit it for approval. So I can see it's just initiated right now. But let me open it back up and look here. My approval trail just initiated, but I can go ahead and submit this for approval. And this time, because I had my configuration on for pre-approval, I can choose this option and say, I'd like to take this class in August. And let me go ahead and submit that for pre-approval. So now it's off, submitted for pre-approval. Okay, so what we need to do now is let's sign out. We're going back in as our committee member. Let's log in as Holly again. So because we didn't pick we left Ricky off of it this time. We didn't pick a supervisor. We're just gonna go right towards the committee member. Excuse me. Okay. So again, we're back on Holly's page. She has her approvals, and again, we have right from the home page here where we could see the committee, Pre-approvals were on activity approvals, which is what we're looking for now. And you can see here we do have Blackwell. We have here is his online class right on the home page, so I could view it and see the details here. Okay, the class starts in August. Thanks for letting us know. And um, hang on just a second. I got a lot of stuff on my screen, so I move the zoom, the little zoom bar around. Sorry. And then so from here I could do, if I wanted to like approve, return, or deny. I also can edit this as a committee member. So the supervisor can't, but the committee member can do that. Um, so this looks good to me as I'm looking through, but I did realize here, let's edit. I did realize so Thomas made a mistake. This actually should be semester hours. So let me fix that. And the value one is right, but it needs to be semester hours. So I can update that now as a committee member to correct it for him. And then I can go ahead and approve it after that. So instead of having to, like, I could do a return and tell him things he needs to change, but especially we're just at the pre-approval process. So let's go ahead and approve this for him. And then maybe I'll just like make a note so that he knows, just make a note so that it's on our audit trail or our approval trail rather. So we can do the approval right from there. And then, he's pre-approved. He's no longer on this list. Okay. I know we're hopping around a bit here, but we're making progress with with this activity. So we're right back to Blackwell. We're right back to our main employee who is going through this process of their plan. Uh and so now what I'm gonna do is look at my activities. And you know what? Maybe I want to just look at. Oops, gotta type the right one in. So, this user may also have like multiple activities in here, especially over time, right? So if they wanted to like filter to like a certain plan on here, they could, or click like the headers to sort. They don't really need to do this. This was the first one in there, so that's also fine. But this just, just showing you that we could filter this grid to be able to see, just a certain grouping of activities if we wanted to. This is pre-approved. So then Thomas is like, okay, excellent. I can take my class. Now I've taken the class. It's the first day of class. I got the syllabus. I can go ahead and attach that on here. Um, Class starts in August. I got the syllabus and I will attach it. So I could, make any notes in here. Okay, this looks good to me. If I wanted to update anything, that maybe happen later. And then if he wanted to come in here and say add the attachment now, so I would click upload file and then let's see, I actually have a conference agenda. These are all just fake files anyways, but so we'll pretend this is the syllabus. Uh, Changed my example around a little bit. I forgot that part. So you just select the file that you would want to attach. If they wanted to attach another one, they could do that. And then there's, the whole list here that could later be like downloaded, or if I wanted to, oh, whoops, I didn't mean to add that one, I can delete it. And then they would be able to save. And once they save that up, that would save with the attachments. I'm not saving just simply because of my test instance, but uh, just one different click there, and then it would be attached. So once I make any changes and I'm ready to submit for final approval, I can view this. And again, same button, submit for final approval. However, now that it's been pre-approved, because I did go through that pre-approval process already, of course, I only have the option now for final approval. This class was great. And I've attached whatever I need to attach, and I'm set to go. I've completed the class. So let me submit it. for final approval. And that goes off. So we can see the approval trail. All of this gets, added there as we saw with the plan. So for the activity as well, all of this back and forth gets documented with, the timestamps with the user that did each step. Um, Let me see. Okay. Okay. So let's go. We got one more approval to do. We're only doing one activity for this plan because I know this is already a lot, but this time I'm going to log in. Let's log in as our committee chairperson, Miss Tara Anthony. So before we were in as Holly Carter, she's one of our committee members. She's on the committee. Tara also on the committee as our chairperson. And so when we log in as Tara, we'll see that she has, she has committee member as well. So she has all the same view to be able to, see these same activities, see the plans that are out here. And if we open, plans, we have supervisor, district plans. Actually, let's double check. Let's go to her profile. So yeah, see, she has committee member. The other thing though is Tara also has district manager, and I should mention that before I start opening all these menu items because her view does look a little bit different than Holly's. And if you caught it, when I open my plan view, because Tara has committee member and district manager, I can see the supervisor plans view, I can see the district plans view, I can add plan templates, I can see all the pages now because she has this higher access. So for activities, same thing. I have all of the options here, which a district manager would also have all of the options without committee member. But because she's a committee member, she can do the approvals. So she does still need both of these. Um, okay. So let me see. I wanted to show a couple other things with her, I think. No, I think we're good. Okay. So let's do the final approval. And for this, I'll go back to, let's go to activity approvals on the side, since we did the last one from the home page. So activity approvals over here. And so again, we have pre-approvals, but there are two tabs because they use pre-approvals for the activities, and they have the final approvals. So once we switch over to final approvals, here's all of the activities out here that are ready for final approval. And so if I wanted, if I'm a committee member and I'm coming in here, I could just select all and approve, or I could just go ahead, hey, here is, Blackwell's plan. Here's Thomas Blackwell. He wanted, me to approve this for him. So I can come in here and just approve that one. Or again, I could view and edit anything if I need to additionally, and then go ahead and approve this. And I also don't have to include a note, so let's just leave it blank this time. And then that's approved. And that's got the final approval on it. So that goes back if I have, again, based on that email notification configuration at the beginning, if I have it set up that users that the submitter will get an email when, either a plan, when in this case an activity is approved, then he would get an email. And if we go back to the user. So we are our standard user. I thought I typed that wrong. Okay, so we're back to this is our standard user employee that just submits their own plans. And so now in the situation where he is my activity is approved. I had my online class here, and if I go to the approval trail, I can see, all of the notes along the way. I can see it's been approved, so that's good to go. If I look at my plan now, I can see that this total CEUs has now been updated with my semester hour, but it's been converted to CEUs. So that would get added to that total now that it's approved. So that updates it as well. And this is, this is set to go. Um, the other thing I want to mention, because we're almost to the point where, we're done with this. This plan's been approved and the only activity has been approved. Um, But the other thing here that I just want to mention as far as the pages on the side is I haven't gone here yet, but the My Professional certifications, this is another one where me as an individual user, I could come to this grid and see my certifications that have been that have been connected. The committee members and the supervisors do have their own views of this page where they could see information relevant to the groups that they would be able to view, similar to like plans and activities, those additional pages. Um, so for these certifications, yeah, so for users with higher access, they will have, yeah, it's either supervisor professional certification or district professional certification. Um, Now, when with the ITCs, when you do that import from Legacy, for those that have Legacy, there is a professional certification import that you do, and that will bring in historical license information. Once you start using IPDP, then it's going to pull up-to-date license information on a regular basis into this page as well. And so this page again is like it's kind of like the view. This is where you would view the information, and then that information then gets pulled in like when they're creating the plans or activities. Like it's kind of pulling from this base page of like what's going to show in those selection options. So kind of a reference page. Um, so that's that. Okay. And so where we're at now, I mentioned at the beginning, we're going through the life cycle of the plan, right? So when we started with Thomas Blackwell, he was creating his plan from the start. So he created his plan got approved, he created an activity, the activity got approved. I'm sure that will happen several more times over the 5 years of the plan. But once they get to the spot where all activities for the plan are approved, and then they're done, right? They're done with this plan and they want to create a new plan for the rest, for the next plan year, for the next license, right? And so once they're ready to wrap this up, if I scroll down here, um and then at the bottom now we have this red button that says archive. So this button will only be available if the plan and all of the attached activities will be I'm sorry, are approved. So if there's like still an activity out there that hasn't been approved yet, then it's not going to show that archive button. So if they go to archive and it's not there, that's what you would check. But once it's ready to go, we click archive. And what it says is, are you sure you want to archive this plan? This cannot be undone. If we're done with it and we need to do a new one, yes, absolutely. What this is going to do, it'll change this plan status to archived, and it'll change all of the associated activities status to archived. So let's do this, and I'll show you what that looks like. So see, we have in this list, we have archived as an option here. It's still here. It's still able to view. We just can't, there's no longer like the ability to, interact with it. But it's like basically, okay, this was our previous plan. It's archived so we can still have all of the information accessible as far as activities go. Here's the archived, all of our activities are archived, and that's just kind of a status thing. So it can be filtered, filtered out of the grids. And then that way, when I start my next plan and start having activities that are actually in approval status, those will be, front and center versus having like those old records down there. So that's like the last step of this, the plan's life cycle, so to say. And then they start new for the next year. So we've made it through that. I am going to show you one more thing here. Now, on all of these users, and I promised this way at the start, but on all of these users, they do have this help tab as well. About is kind of the system information, but I want to show that we do have this documentation link. So within here, way at the start, we looked at going from the SSDT main page, but we also have a link, sorry, right to the user manual. And so if you have, if you're you have, any kind of user honestly in here, they could come in here and go to the user manual, and it'll take them right to this page where they could go through, get more information about activities, plans, or again, if they go to these user processes, I'm sorry, user procedures, then they would be able to see, the walkthroughs of things that they may need to know. So, if I'm a standard user, again, we looked through these today, but I need to create an activity, and this gives them the steps. So that makes it really accessible. The other thing that's in here is that import from Kiosk, which again, that's the one we looked at earlier, and that will be available soon for those of you at the ITC to get all of the details on the import files. Okay. Okay, so let me I'm just gonna sign out here for good measure, but that is all I have. I know that's a lot. I hope that this was helpful. Yeah, definitely more of an overview than a preview. I'm definitely sure that we will be talking more about IPDP in the future. But that this is where we're starting. So thank you so much for those of you that attended in person today, and for those that may watch this video later. We really appreciate it. And yeah, if anybody has any last minute questions, let me know. But if not, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great weekend.